This right here is the Star100 wireless microphone system from a company called CaTeFo or CaTeFo or something like that. I'm not even sure how to pronounce it. Now, it is $60, which makes it really affordable, and I have not yet had a chance to hear it. In fact, you're hearing it before I do because this is the first time I've used it. Now, it's affordable, but what's interesting is that it has one feature that I have never seen on any wireless microphone ever, and we're going to explore that in just a little bit. So I'm going to tell you about some of the features of this wireless microphone. You get to hear how it sounds, and I've also brought along some competitors of this microphone so you can compare against those too. The wireless system has 2 transmitters and 1 receiver, which is pretty common. It comes with a charging case, so you can charge all 3 of the units at one time, and the charging case has its own battery. The transmitter and the receiver both have the same basic chassis or case design, so they've had to make some compromises as a result, and this is probably to save money. For example, on the receiver, you have a plus and minus button, which raise and lower the volume or the gain, which you would expect. They have a plus and minus button on the transmitter, which does not control volume. In fact, the plus button on the transmitter does nothing at all by itself. The minus button actually turns on noise reduction. The transmitter has a mini jack port where you can plug in an external lavalier microphone, which I think is a really nice touch for something in this price range. And like I said, they use the same design for the transmitter and receiver. That port also exists on the receiver, but that's where you have a headphone jack, so you can monitor your signal. Now you can mute either transmitter by just hitting that power button briefly, and like I mentioned, there was noise reduction on the transmitter, so let's actually hear the noise reduction. And the light turns green, and now you're hearing the noise reduction. And again, I have no idea how this sounds. You're hearing it before I am, but this is with the noise reduction on, and now I'm going to turn it back off. The USB-C port on the receiver not only can charge the receiver, but it's also the audio out. So you've got a bunch of different cables you can plug in there, all of which have USB-C on one side, and you get a mini jack or a 3.5 millimeter jack. You get a TRS one for using with cameras, which is what I'm using right now. You get a TRRS one for using with headphone microphone combos like you might see on a computer, and you also get a lightning attachment for iPhones, and you get USB-C for Androids. You've got one LED on the transmitter and also on a receiver, and that is the only feedback you get from these devices. So it changes color based on its state. It's either blue or green or red, and it's flashing or not flashing, and that's going to tell you all sorts of things like if it's muted or things like that. Now, it's a tiny LED, but it seems to work okay. Now, the company claims that you get 5 hours of usage with these. I haven't been able to test that yet, so I'm going to take their word for it. They also say that there's a 50-meter range if the transmitter and the receiver are unobstructed. Now you're listening to the Boya M1V series, and I reviewed this earlier. And I brought this one out because this is very similarly priced to the Star100. Now it has some different features, and it doesn't have that secret unusual feature that I'm going to tell you about in just a moment, but you can get a sense of how something in this price range sounds compared to the Star100. So again, this is the Boya M1V series. All right, now you're listening to the Rode Go-To wireless system, and this is way more expensive than the Star100 system, but it is kind of a standard. You know, you see them in videos all the time, so I think it would be helpful to just hear how this sounds compared to the Star100. All right, so what was that really unusual feature I was talking about earlier? I'll give you a hint. This unit comes with not 2 dead cats, but 3 dead cats. And no, one isn't to spare. The receiver, the unit that actually fits on the camera itself, has a built-in microphone. The idea is that you can be interviewing 2 people on camera and have the questions being asked by the camera person itself. So you can just turn that on and it turns into a 3rd microphone. Finn, why don't we go ahead and do that? All right, so go ahead and interview me.
So how is this interview going so far?
This is the best interview I've had all day.
Am I your favorite son? Hey!
All right, I've got the Star100 back in the studio now. I wanted you to hear how they sound indoors and also without the dead cats. So there are some thoughtful touches with these microphones. The cables for the phones, I think, are well thought out because you can plug it into the mic set, and then they have that splitter cable so that you can power your phone at the same time. That's nice. Interestingly, in the package, there were 2 tiny, really powerful magnets, and there was no mention in the user guide what they were for. Now, they are very likely for putting behind your clothing because the back of the transmitters, they're magnetic, so you can put a magnet behind your shirt and then you don't have to actually clip it to anything. I should warn you though that they are really small, so they're easy to lose, and if you have small children around, they could be kind of dangerous. One tiny quibble is that the microphones are labeled TX and RX, which is great, but they've labeled them on the bottom, so when you put them in the case there, you can't actually tell which one is the receiver and which ones are the transmitters. It would have been nice if they had that printed up top somewhere. Minor. One thing that was driving me nuts for a while was trying to put the dead cats on. The dead cats are held on with elastic. There's no like locking mechanism, and the transmitter and receiver units are pretty slippery plastic, and I just couldn't put it on like, you know, like you'd put on a sock. You just can't put it over that. I actually ended up having to roll the dead cat inside out and then sort of roll it back onto the top. Not great, but you know, for the price point, I guess I can deal with it. So that big feature that you don't find on other microphone systems, having that third microphone built into the receiver, it was a little disappointing, actually. I mean, it's a good idea in theory, but as soon as Finn turned it on, I could hear my voice coming through the receiver mic on the camera as well as the transmitter on my chest, and it just made it sound kind of muddy. And then when Finn spoke, he was so much louder than mine that it was hard to balance. If these were recording to separate channels, or you could adjust the volume of each of the microphones separately, that would help balance that out. But that was kind of tricky. I could envision that if you had the camera on a tripod and you move the interviewer / camera operator further away, then you could balance it out, but that's kind of getting fussy. So I'm not sure how useful that is after all. On the plus side, when it comes to sound quality, these really do a pretty decent job. They have a better low end than either the Boya system or the Rode system. And that's been, you know, one of my pet peeves with the Rode system is that, you know, there's so much going for it, but it sounds a little thin. They got a pretty steep roll off, and so it's more mid-range and high end. That said, I think the high end is more detailed on the Rode system than the Star100 system. But overall, I think the Star100 sounds really good for the price point. So should you take a chance on the Star100 system from a brand you've probably never heard of before? Yeah, I think so. I mean, $60, these are doing pretty darn good for $60.